Welcome to the Kbbreview Podcast. My name is Matt Baker, and this is the next instalment of our special episodes around the Kbbreview Retail and Design Awards 2025. A huge thank you needs to go out to our awards podcast partner, Sonas Bathrooms. It's great to have their support, as between now and the event on Thursday, April the 24th, at the Blackpool Tower Ballroom, no less, we'll be bringing you more special bonus episodes where we'll really get under the skin of the awards and celebrate the very best talent our industry has to offer. In fact, we'll be revealing the shortlist itself in a very special episode on this podcast just before Christmas. So a massive thank you to Sonas Bathrooms, as it wouldn't be possible without them. They launched in the UK a couple of years ago after years of success in their native island, and since then have gone on from strength to strength. You can find out everything you need to know about them at sonasbathrooms.com, and I'll make sure that link is in the episode description. This month's episode is a peek behind the curtain of the awards, as we have a chat with some of the judges, both in the retail business categories and the design categories. We'll find out about their approach to judging and interpreting the criteria, and what the judges expect from the 2025 awards in particular. Before we get into that, today is the day we close entries to the awards, so maybe by the time you hear this, it will be too late. But if you have submitted by the 5 p.m. deadline today, well done and good luck. In any case, for more information on the awards and booking tables, you can go to kbbreview.com/awards. Now, on with the show. The Kbbreview Retail and Design Awards are the most robust judging process of any awards that I know. I think there's less scrutiny in an MI6 recruitment interview. In fact, over the years, we've seen some lively debate between judges over award submissions, and it's testament to the high standards we, and by we I mean you, set yourselves in the KBB sector. So, in the first part of today's episode, I'm happy to welcome two of the judges from our design categories, interior design writer and journalist Elspeth Pridham from The Insider. Hello, Elspeth.
Hi, Matt.
Hello. And joining us is Keith Myers, designer and director of the Myers Touch in Winchester. Hello, Keith.
Hi. Thank you.
I'm going to start with you, Keith, just before we get into the judging. You're first time judge this year, but you've entered the awards and won the awards many times before. Why become a judge, and what's the biggest benefit of being recognised professionally and winning?
A big question. I've judged other design competitions before this one, so I love the judging process. I think when you see people's creativity, ideas, where they're stretching the boundaries of design, I think it's quite exciting to participate in something like that, and to be really perhaps selecting some of the new designers for the next generation that are coming out, which I think is good to see the generation grow and their skills grow as they grow into an industry, which is a fantastic industry to be in, but not normally one that people choose, as I've discovered over the years. What was the second part of the question? Because I've forgotten that.
about winning. What does it mean professionally to win an award like this?
Well, I think to be awarded something from your peers is incredibly rewarding. I think over the years, we're an isolated studio, kind of in the middle of nowhere, disconnected from what's happening in around, and you're just doing the very best that you can for your clients, because one, that's how you win a project. It's also how you get the excitement of seeing it implemented and going through. But then to suddenly be able to put one forward and your peers are then saying to you, gosh, this is an amazing project, and you win, or even get to a finalist these days, actually, I think is you really won, because it's a very, very competitive award. And when you only have 4 people and have significant entries, getting to the final is you've won. Wow, that's amazing. So to win out of the 4 is a phenomenal achievement and a real pat on the back, because you don't always know how you're doing industry wide. So I think that's a lovely accolade. I think also when clients walk in, and obviously we've, as you said, we've been up for many, many awards over the years. So we have a wall of awards, and people don't really scrutinize it in detail, of course. So it doesn't really kind of matter what's on there sometimes, but they look at it and it just speaks something. It just talks about equality in the industry. And I love awards things because it brings the cream to the top at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's absolutely why we love doing the awards. Now, Elspeth, you judge to a set criteria, but is there anything in particular that you hold in high regard, like aesthetics, use of trends, interpreting the brief, etc.?
I think I'm always going to come in with aesthetics first, because I'm not a kitchen or bathroom designer, I'm a journalist. So as the end user, how a bathroom looks, sorry, I should say I'm judging the bathroom design awards, is so important. You've got to walk in there and straight away it's got to look great. So when I'm looking through, that is always going to be a first impression. But then you've got to really drill down, because obviously you can have something that looks fantastic, but it just doesn't work. You know, people still might overlook storage, lighting, plumbing. Kitchens and bathrooms are really complicated rooms and they've got to work. So it's aesthetic first, and then really drilling down. If you were in there, how would that room work? And then obviously meeting the brief, because you can read. I mean, some people have an amazing brief and they've asked the designer, just you do you. But equally, that can be quite alarming because, if you don't know what someone really hates or someone really loves, that's quite alarming too. And I think it really shows when the designers have taken time and sat down with the customer to really talk through exactly what they like and what they don't like and how to make that all come together in quite often a bathroom, quite often a very small room. So how can you make that work, but also have that wow factor when you walk in?
I also think there's, something with brief is that's where the storytelling is. Keith, what is it that you'll be looking for in the kitchen categories?
Well, I think it was Johnny Gray who said many years ago that kitchens are generally quite boring. So I think you're looking for a little bit of life in things. And there is a lot of repetition in the industry. And sometimes I think we get lost in what I would call a product design rather than a kitchen design. Focus sometimes too much on individual product itself rather than actually what it's trying to achieve for the client. So I think when I'm looking at pictures and things, I'm thinking, other than the visual impact, is how does it make me feel? Because that's a real design. When someone walks into their kitchen for the first time, how does it make them feel? And then the question, who do you want to impact in that space? The people, the dynamics, the relationships that happen in that space. How do you want to live? It starts to dig into some of the practical aspects of Elspeth was just talking about. Design is difficult only when if you look at form and function, that's what we're doing. Form and function is great design. You can do a fantastic design and no function, or a very practical kitchen and no design. Hard design is doing both really, really well. And that means that they have to perform at that level of fantastic form and fantastic function is what good design ultimately is. And the final level is to do with budget and cost. And budget is, I don't think design should be directly related to cost. I think good design should be accessible to the many, not the few. All budget gives you is the opportunity to have materials that are more costly, basically, but intrinsic design still works. So that's the four things for me. How do you want to feel? Who do you want to impact? How do you want to live? And the budget, how much do you want to spend?
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that go into this. Elspeth, you've done a few of these awards now. Talk us through the difference first when you judge an entry on paper, and then you get to the next stage in having that face-to-face chat with the finalists.
Oh, having the face-to-face chat makes all the difference. Keith has got to face this yet, that there are a lot of entrants and we do have to sit down and go through them, and everyone does take this very seriously, and it does take several hours, several days to look at them. But obviously, as I say, I'll look at aesthetics, I'll read through the brief, I'll read everything they've done, but it doesn't 100% come to life until you meet the designers. And when they're there, they can really talk us through their decisions. And sometimes as judges, we might look at something and think, oh, why did they do that? They got that wrong. And then they'll explain that, the plumbing was coming up here, or there was an old chimney breast, or, the floor was on two different heights. And you can really drill down. You mentioned right at the beginning of this, Matt, that you end up having lively debate. It's very much a two-way conversation. They will present, and then us as judges will ask a lot of questions, and they can feed back. So it's a very much sort of two-way conversation. And there's definitely been instances in the past where I think some of us had, including myself, had made decisions ahead of time, and then when you see them you completely change your mind because somebody can explain why they did certain things and why it now works or why it didn't work, and you just get the feeling of their enthusiasm for what they're doing, and that it's just a great experience, to be honest, to be part of that.
Yeah, it is very rigorous, the process. And Keith, we always say that the awards are a celebration of the industry and its talent. What are you expecting to see from some of the admissions?
Well, I like seeing the out of the ordinary. I mean, having done many, many kitchens over the years, what is off the shelf design. Although it can look really stunning, it's someone just almost reproducing what's in the manufacturer's book rather than coming up with something that is really very creative and really well thought through that meets a specific budget need. One thing I don't think we focus on that much sometimes is the aspect of space planning. I think space planning, I have a project at the moment, we're redesigning the whole of the bottom of the house and the layout, taking out walls and redefining the space, because if the architecture is wrong, the kitchen can't always compensate for that. So you have to have the architecture right. So I'll be looking at architecture, which is the space, what they've done with it, how they've played with it, have they pressed into the architecture and have they challenged the space? And then have they challenged the whole thing, or they just kind of plonked in something they've done before? We've done a project recently where we've literally built an island off of 2 discs, and we've gone out there with steel frameworks and it didn't work, it bent, so we had to dismantle it and redo it and then put it back again. And so it's a bit hairy sometimes when you're doing stuff that's a bit bleeding edge. You know what I mean? But that's what good design is about, stretching the boundaries of what is possible and going out there with unusual things that are creative. So it's, I think it's looking beyond, well, what's the next thing that we're looking at, and how can we see designers that are doing things that are incredibly creative.
I completely agree with you there, Keith. One of the things that pops up a lot in the bathrooms a few years ago was tiling. I think anyway, you've got to be really careful of tiles, because obviously you use them, you want them, but they are one of the things that can most date a setting. And you know, most people aren't going to redo their bathroom very quickly. And the abundance of grey tiles a few years ago, and just because grey seems to be a fashion colour, it does not go in every setting. You know, a hell of a lot of bathrooms have very small windows that might be north facing, and it's just, that might have looked good in one setting, but it just looks dreary now. And I think I completely agree. Looking at the architecture and then coming, quite often we say wow factor, but that doesn't mean it has to be all bells and whistles and balloons. It just might be really clever solutions to an awkward space. And yeah, I have certain triggers that I think, oh, not this again. So yeah, I would agree.
I think your point on wow factor is a really good one, because just the 3 of us here, what is wow to each of us is incredibly personal. So in order to get the client to walk into the space and go, wow, you have to dig really deeply inside them, as it were, you know, into their psyche to understand what it is that they're looking for and that they really value. And you can often tell people that have certain experiences, when you're talking in a conversation, you can say, oh, did you grow up in a farmhouse? And they say, oh, yeah, how on earth do you know? Well, because they're articulating something that is the inner part of them, or what they felt was comfortable. So in order to get the wow, you have to understand the history of the person. So we have this phrase at the Myers Touch that we use sometimes called coaching the kitchen out of a client, which sounds a bit psychological, doesn't it, really? But that's exactly what we do, is we have to deeply understand. So wow, I translate into kind of coaching the kitchen out of the client. And you can't do it with everybody, because not everybody wants to be that intimate in a conversation about what they're looking for and how they, but when you can do it, you find that there's a degree of emotion that they attach to what you've created for them, which is very powerful, which is why I call the wow factor.
Yeah, and they're committed to it, and they've spent a lot of money, whatever their budget, and yeah,
they spend more than they expected. That wasn't the plan, but that's their choice.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're hoping to see, Elspeth, in the bathroom categories?
I think actually, Keith mentioned this earlier, bespoke, and I think we are seeing, I think that was something that has been in kitchens for a very long time, but we are seeing that a bit more in bathrooms. People are using bathrooms a bit more as sort of sanctuaries. We want them to be tidier. So sort of storage, building things in, dividing in a big room, that can be as awkward as dividing a small room. So dividing things out, building walls, creating the setting, because you've got to have a loo, you've got to have a basin, you know, those are givens. But how do you make that work in that space? And I think it doesn't have to cost a fortune at all to go bespoke. And so I think that's always quite an interesting way to go. And very much what Keith was saying as well, how do people use that bathroom? Are they just going in and doing their teeth? Have they got 3 children who are all swarming around them? Is there 2 of them? They need twin basins. Those very simple, who's using it and how can their life be made nicer, and how can they every time go in there think this is lovely and I'm glad I spent the money. I can't put one finger on it, Matt, sorry. It's that general ambiance, isn't it? Yeah. What makes this special? What makes this special?
I have to say, it's going to be fascinating to see the shortlisted sort of design entries. I don't envy the task at hand that you guys have. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, Elspeth, Keith. Take care and let's catch up soon.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks to Elspeth and Keith there, our design category judges. Now's time for the second part of today's episode, where we're focusing on the retail business categories. Think Retailer of the Year, New Retailer of the Year and Showroom of the Year. both kitchens and bathrooms. For this, I'm happy to welcome Sophia Sherrilambous, co-founder of Origins Living. Hello, Sophia.
Hi.
Hey there. And managing director of Searle & Taylor, Darren Taylor. Hello, Darren.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You guys are very, very experienced, so I'm very lucky to have you on the episode today, and that's what makes you good judges, obviously. Now, these retail categories are different from the design categories, as they look at businesses rather than individuals and projects, and therefore it's a different set of criteria to judge against. So we'll start with you, Sophia. Although you're judging against that set criteria, all judges have their own experiences. Is there anything in particular that you believe to be the deciding factor, like turnover and company size? Does that matter over staff care or marketing to an audience? All these different things.
Absolutely not. Turnover is relative to the size of a business. So a high turnover doesn't do anything for me. What it is for me and what I look for is the resources that or the investment that the company have put in to the output. So it could be that one company is very small and it's a startup, therefore they've only got a limited budget, and then they're competing against a multi-million-pound business. So it's not fair to look at things like the number of staff, the turnover, the size of the showroom. I don't judge on that at all. I judge on what they're doing as a business, how they're using their investment, are they working smartly? And the other thing that I work on, because I work very intuitively, I feel the vibe. And I can read through, I don't care what they write, I can read straight through it.
That is quite important. You guys obviously run your own businesses, so there's certain things that just don't get past you, and that's why you're judges. Darren, is there a standout criteria for you at all?
Well, similar to Sophia, I mean, across the board of especially kitchen companies, a lot of them are going to be smaller husband and wife teams, small teams. And then, we're going to get some of the bigger ones that may have a few more showrooms, 3, 4, 5. So obviously it would be silly to judge on turnover and amount of staff and size. What we're judging is a business that's excelling within that category. So I have to be careful as well, because kitchen companies like bathroom companies, I'm sure, operate in certain sectors of the market. So it's quite easy to look at the ones that are right at the top end of the market, where their average order value might be 60, 70, 80,000, compared to another company who might be aiming for the 15, 20, 25,000. So it's easy to get sucked in by the beautiful, stunning showrooms and beautiful backlit onyx or whatever it is you're seeing. But obviously your question is for the retailer, which is quite different to the showroom. So like Sphere, we read through the many entries. Some of them are very well put together, others maybe not so, but you've got all the cliches that are in there. So we're used to reading those and seeing those. But remember, we can go further and we can do a bit more homework. So if I'm unsure about something, I might check out the website. I might have a little sneaky preview on Companies House. I might look at Google reviews and see how great their customer service actually is, because sometimes that
social
differs.
Media.
Yeah, and we can have a good old look now, far more than just the entry and what these people have written. But to answer your question, no, it's not based on turnover or amount of staff. It's more based on business acumen. We're looking for the businesses that are excelling in that category.
Yeah, and you alluded to it there, Sophia, but Darren, for you, the world of business is very good at coming up with infinite number of ways to explain why, as an organisation, it's different from the rest and its competitors, which is difficult, as you said, for the untrained eye to filter through. But how does that affect the judging of the awards category for you?
Well, I know people are looking for something that's different, but I'm not necessarily requesting something that's different, because you've got to be great at what you do. And by being different doesn't necessarily make you great. We've got to excel in what we're doing. So it's being clever about how you go about it in terms of your advertising, the way you're setting up your business. And I think quite a few of these companies may lose sight of it's all about the customer experiences, customer journey. And that reflects how well a business is doing. So whether that business decides to put in a bright pink display in their shop window or something maybe more persuasive and lovely, so when people walk past, they're like, wow, that's great. It's how you go about being the best. That's what we're looking for.
And Sophia, how do you see through the corporate speak?
I see through it because I take a holistic approach and I look at all the aspects of the business, the operations, the people, the customer experience, the marketing, and I put it all together and I think, do these all gel together? Because a company might be great at one, but not the other. So I'm looking for it to be seamless and for the whole journey to be seamless from one end to the other. And also, as a supplier, I look at how do they treat their suppliers, because it's good or you're great with your customers, but if you don't have a great relationship with your suppliers, then that doesn't work for me. So I look at absolutely everything, and it's through the written aspect, you won't get that. You only get that when you go and visit and you look at things that are not obvious to them but are obvious to you. So yes, it's making sure that each part of the business is a jigsaw and they all run smoothly together. And yes, it's not about being different. I don't like gimmicks or anything like that. I just want to look at a good, solid business.
Absolutely. And then from your experience there, you mentioned there about the difference, because the first bit of the judging is the entry from the paper, but then the next stage is visiting the business in person. How does that change for you, Sophia?
For me, it's not that it changes, but you're able to understand it. So whatever the retailers write, then you're able to ask further questions and go into depth. And if they've done their homework and they know what they're talking about, then you'll be able to pull out those questions you ask them. We're not out to trick them. I was asked once when I was doing this, is this like an Ofsted visit? And I said, no, we're not out to trick you. Whatever you say to us, you say to us, and we're not here to make it difficult, but we will ask probing questions.
As you should.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Darren, what about you? How much more do you get when speaking to people direct or when you're in the business?
Well, you're going to get a really good insight. I mean, we've got to remember that we probably know a fair amount of these businesses already. They've probably could have been shortlisted before, but certainly, you know, we do see some of the same businesses again. And Andy makes it very clear to us, we are judging in what's happened in the past year. So it's like the Premiership. The season's finished, we've stopped, we start again. So we've got to rewind the last 12 months. And so there's no good just putting in the same pitch again. However, once we've whittled them down, and they have got to be scoring literally 10 out of 10 on every single subject to get whittled down to those final four. And I think, you know, if you make the final four, you've won in a kind, you know, you kind of have won. So we're going to get out there and we're going to get on a train, plane, car, and we're going to go and visit that company. We may have visited them before, or it may be something new. But, you know, during that visit, we're probably going to be spending 4 hours, I would say, with the company. You know, we don't want to overstay our welcome, but equally we've got to pick up on the vibe. We've got to speak to staff. We've got to see what's going on, get to the bottom of it, you know, and live it as a client would. And like Sophia said, we're not out to trick anybody. We might ask some probing questions. Maybe you might not have the answer to it. Get back to us on it. But it's not like we're prying and nosing, but it's got to be an honest account. So be careful what you're writing. You know, if you've got an immaculate showroom, if you've got 100 5-star Google reviews, or you're saying, you know, make sure that you've got the evidence to back it up. We're splitting hairs, I think, in those 4 visits. You know, very difficult. The first visit I do, I come away, okay, they've won it, they've got it. And then you go to the second one and you're like, oh my goodness me. That's amazing. And so it goes on. It really is difficult. I make plenty of notes. I write it all up. Normally I'm staying in a hotel afterwards. As soon as I go back, I take it all in. I write it all up. But to answer the question, you're never going to get a true understanding of that business through the paper entry. You've got to go and visit. And that's our job as judges to do so.
And I suppose there's so much talent, as you say, so it's kind of like that you are splitting hairs a lot of the time. I mean, that's what the awards is about. It's about celebrating the best of the industry. What are you, Darren, expecting to see from submissions, considering, say, the difficult market conditions that we've experienced this year?
Yeah, so I doubt there's going to be lots of growth out there. But, you know, growth isn't always something that you need to have a vibrant business. I think, you know, it's what you make of what you've got. So there's some companies that I'm guessing, or last time I was looking at them, are doing similar to what I'm doing, where it's not just a kitchen. It could be a boot room, a utility, a media unit. You know, people are getting into bedrooms now. Starting to see a bit of crossover as well, where kitchen companies are dipping their feet into bathrooms, and maybe it's happening vice versa. I don't know, but it's making the most out of that client. We all have had a difficult year. I've spoken to some big companies, turnovers of 20 million retail, multiple showrooms, tough tough year. Everybody's been reporting a tough year. I've seen that myself as well. So I doubt if I'm going to be seeing, this year, we've taken on 10 more staff and, we're doing another 30 kitchens a year more or whatever. But it's being clever with what we've got and holding your ground and, not having to make people redundant or anything negative like that because, they're really pushing and making the most out of what they've got. Which normally is a fantastic showroom, great staff, a good name in the business. So, it's what they're doing with that, with all their resources and all their tools and how they're going about it and making the very most out of it. So I'm expecting to see, especially, these people are good and they're clever. And, I'm like, blimey, that's a really good idea. So I'm sure we'll be seeing some clever marketing, marketing that doesn't actually cost money, but just takes time, like, sending letters out to people that are going for planning permission, and a leaflet and something, right down to knocking on doors when they see a skip outside the house, So there's lots of ways that we can keep moving even in difficult times.
Yeah, and Sophia, what are you expecting? What are you hoping to see?
Well, apart from I'm hoping to see lots and lots of entries, and I know it's been very difficult for all of us, but like Darren said, I want to know what has they've done in this difficult market. And again, it's not about the money, but have they done something different? Have they marketed in a different way? Are they still updating their showroom? Or maybe they're not taking on staff, but are they investing in training? Because I think with our industry, both the bathrooms and kitchens, where I think the top retailers are the ones that are continuously developing their showroom and their staff. And for me, the team is the most important because you can constantly update your displays, but if you haven't got the designers to be able to sell that vision, then you've wasted your time. And I really want to see an upping of customer experience.
Yes, it's a key point, actually, that ESG, that sustainability from a resource point of view, people resource is really key, and maybe will come into play a lot more this year. I'm always impressed with anyone that not only has the nerve and confidence to start a business, but the resilience to keep it going. So very much looking forward to seeing how this is all going to unfold. Good luck with the judging, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. Sophia and Darren, take care, and we'll see you on the other side. So there we have it. You've heard from some of the judges, and we'll maybe try and check back in with them later down the line. Thank you, Elspeth Pridham from The Insider, Keith Myers from The Myers Touch, Sophia Charalambous from Origins Living, and Darren Taylor from Serlin Taylor. Also, another thank you to our awards podcast sponsor, Sonas Bathrooms. You really don't want to miss next month's special episode, as I'll be revealing the finalists that have been shortlisted in all categories. Without question, this is going to be the favourite episode of the series, so do make sure you have a look out for that as we approach Christmas. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care.